Will never forget that day. It was a turning point in my life, different from all the calm and routine days I was used to. In an instant, everything changed. I woke up that morning as usual, feeling slightly tired but hopeful for a new day. After making myself a cup of flavored coffee, I stood at the window, watching what was happening outside. I was 59, but deep down I always felt young. My hair, though beginning to gray, was still thick and shiny, and I carefully arranged it in a neat hairstyle to emphasize my facial features. I chose stylish dresses that emphasized my figure and gave me confidence. Light, flowing fabrics hugged my hips, creating the image of a woman who knew her worth. I stubbornly refused to accept the reality of aging, taking care of myself and exercising regularly. Every time I looked in the mirror, I tried to see someone energetic and attractive in the reflection. My green eyes, full of life, looked at me with hope, but the emptiness inside remained and nothing could fill it. I felt time passing, and despite my best efforts, the loneliness could not be ignored. I longed to once again feel the warmth and joy that once filled my life, but for now I only watched the world continue to move forward, leaving me in the shadows. The day I met Lucas for the first time, I had come to an event organized by a retirement group. I was a little nervous, not knowing what to expect, but when he entered the room, all my doubts disappeared. Lucas was full of energy and enthusiasm. His smile lit up the space and I couldn't take my eyes off him. He quickly won the sympathy of everyone present, including me, an older woman who hadn't felt that way in a long time. We met during one of the promotions. Lucas approached me with an offer to help, and in that moment I felt a connection between us. We started talking and I learned that he was passionate about photography and dreamed of traveling. His passion for life was infectious and I couldn't help but admire how he genuinely cared about the people he worked with. With each new encounter, I realized more and more that my feelings for Lucas were becoming more than just friendship. I, a retired woman who was used to being alone, suddenly felt a spark ignite in my heart. We spent time together discussing our dreams and plans, and I noticed how he started paying more attention to me too. Every time he smiled, a warm spark ignited in my chest, and I knew it wasn't just sympathy, it was something deeper, something I couldn't ignore. Lucas always came in with a wide smile that lit up his face and made him even more attractive. His blonde hair, slightly disheveled, gave him a casual look, and his bright blue eyes sparkled with liveliness and kindness. He wore an athletic uniform that emphasized his muscles and confidence. His thin but strong arms, with well-defined veins, stood out as he lifted heavy boxes, and I couldn't help but admire his strength and grace. His figure was athletic, with broad shoulders and a taut stomach that spoke of his active lifestyle. I noticed the way his clothes fit his body, emphasizing every detail, from his muscular arms to his slender legs. When he moved, there was an ease and confidence about him that drew the eyes. I couldn't help but admire the way he combined strength and grace, and every time he appeared, my heart sank with excitement. Lucas was more than just a volunteer, he was a symbol to me of hope and the new life I had been searching for so long. But that day everything changed. I was heading for the door when I saw Lucas, who, as always, had come to help me with my shopping. He walked toward my house with boxes in his hands, and suddenly he tripped, dropping one of them. My heart raced. I dropped the bag and ran to him. He fell to the ground, scraping his knee and elbow badly. The pain was written all over his face, but he still tried to smile when he saw me, though there was anxiety in his eyes. I insisted he come inside and let me look at his wounds. I helped him up, supporting him as we walked to my house. He hesitated at first, but seeing my determination, he finally agreed. Once we were inside, I led him to the couch and grabbed the first aid kit. My hands were shaking, but I tried to hold them so Lucas wouldn't notice. As I worked, I couldn't help but notice how young and energetic he looked up close. There was a kind of maturity in his eyes that caught me off guard. "I'm sorry, Monica, for bothering you so much," he said, smiling, and I couldn't hide my smile in response. "You fell and hurt yourself and I'm just going to walk away?" "No, Lucas, you're not just a volunteer. I see how much you care about people, and honestly, having you around makes me feel alive in a way I haven't felt in a long time," I spoke quickly. My voice shook and my cheeks flushed. Now I couldn't take the words back. Lucas's facial expression changed, a look of determination in his eyes. He slowly leaned closer, his gaze never leaving mine, and the air between us became electric. I'm sure he hadn't expected such a kind gesture from me. Most people only expect him to help, mostly with shopping, and aren't willing to give something in return. I felt something stirring in my chest. I had a small apartment near my house that was not yet rented. I offered him to move there at a reasonable price. At that moment, I realized that everything was going to change from that moment on. As I dressed his wounds, I held Lucas's hand. My palm lingered on his skin a little longer than it should have. For a moment, my eyes roamed over his broad shoulders and strong arms, and I noticed that he was looking at me too closely as well. The trepidation inside was getting stronger and stronger, and I was getting lost in the moment. This caused the bandage to suddenly fall out of my hands. When I bent down to pick it up, Lucas bent down at the same time as me, and our hands accidentally made contact again. We both froze, and there was a tension in the air that was almost palpable. I felt my heart beat faster and my breath hitched. It felt like an eternity, and I couldn't take my eyes off his eyes, full of wonder and tenderness. I felt something stirring in my chest again. Lucas isn't just a volunteer, he's a man who truly cares about others. My voice shook, and I realized I was revealing my soul to him, but in that moment, I didn't care. He was looking at me with such sincerity. I couldn't ignore my feelings anymore. I always thought happiness was something that came on its own. But now I realize that sometimes you have to seek it out, even if it's scary. Lucas slowly leaned closer, and I felt his warmth. I hadn't expected to meet someone who made me feel the way he did, either. I couldn't hold back a smile, and in that moment, all my doubts and fears dissolved. I leaned towards him and our lips met in a light kiss. It was like a spark that ignited a fire inside me. I felt all my worries and loneliness fade away, leaving only joy and hope. I was in complete shock that I had allowed myself to do this, but at the same time I realized that it was exactly what I needed. When we pulled away, Lucas looked at me with surprise and admiration. His eyes reflected my own feelings, and I realized that this was just the beginning of something new and wonderful. But I still felt stupid for letting him into my home. There was no regret, though. I wanted to feel something more. He, for his part, understood me and was glad I'd opened up to him. It didn't seem like an accident, it felt like fate. I suggested that Lucas stay for a while and drink the bottle of wine that was on the shelf. I knew that because of my age, I shouldn't drink alone, and that was my subtle hint. He agreed, and soon we were sitting on the bed, enjoying the atmosphere, which was gradually becoming more and more relaxed. We took a couple of sips, and I felt the wine warming me from the inside out. I set the bottle down on the table beside me, and at that moment the room was silent, filled only with our breathing and the slight clinking of glasses. Suddenly, Lucas set his wine glass on the table and leaned toward me. I felt the intensity of his deep, focused gaze. Combined with the warmth of the alcohol, my heart and mind were at war. His eyes never took their eyes off of me, and the way this young man watched with such scrutiny brought an excitement I hadn't felt in a long time. I smiled, clasping my hands in my lap. Once again I couldn't take my gaze away from his eyes. The space between us seemed much smaller than it actually was. He'd been honest when he'd said he'd come here for a fresh start, but the more he talked, the more I wanted to get to know him better. There was something light and alive about him, and his words stunned me. The wine, the atmosphere, the way he looked at me, all of it was striking. I took a deep breath. My heart was pounding so fast it was impossible to calm down. This night was so special, and no one had made me feel this way in a long time. The tension between us peaked as I leaned toward him and our lips met. My heart felt like it was about to burst out of my chest. His kiss awakened feelings in me that I'd suppressed for years, but then reality crashed over me like a wave. I pulled away quickly, my face flushed with embarrassment, and my thoughts swirled in chaos. This was wrong, and I stumbled towards the kitchen, trying to escape the storm inside. I didn't realize Lucas was following me until I felt his hands on my waist. His warmth and closeness stopped me in my tracks. He gently turned me around to face him and our gazes met, then he kissed me again, this time deeper and more intense. I couldn't breathe, couldn't pull away from him. My hands instinctively reached for his shoulders, and his strong arms wrapped around me. I felt like we were the only two people in the whole world. Lucas broke the kiss for a moment and looked into my eyes. There was a determination and warmth in his voice that completely woke me up. I nodded slightly and his hand moved gently down my back. He slowly led me back upstairs to the bedroom, my heart racing with each step. The anticipation grew as soon as I entered the room. I sat on the edge of the bed, and Lucas stood in front of me, pausing for a moment. His eyes roamed over me, and I felt the heat of the guy's gaze. He slowly raised his hands to my shoulders, gently sliding the thin straps of my dress down. The fabric slid over my skin, and I could feel the admiration and desire in Lucas's eyes, which only fueled my attraction to him. This moment was unlike anything I dared to imagine in years. All that was left was to give myself over to the flow completely. Before lying down on the bed, I glimpsed my body in the mirror at the other end of the room. I looked mature and alluring the moment Lucas gently placed his hands on my shoulders. He told me to lie down on the bed, and he hovered over me. His hands rested on my waist. Moving slowly, I felt something I hadn't felt in so long, something I'd missed so much. It didn't take long to react, and I made a sound that surprised even me. I couldn't figure out where to put my hands, like I couldn't deal with my feelings. It was so beautiful, and I missed these emotions raging inside me. I closed my eyes, letting myself get lost in the moment. When I opened them to look at Lucas, I saw him flushed and breathless. The sight turned me on even more, and I couldn't contain the desire that overwhelmed me. I could feel his hot breath on my neck, and it felt incredibly good. Arching my back, I felt his hands begin to explore every millimeter of my body, as if exploring anew. They took their time, and each touch left a wave of warmth behind it. Lucas leaned in, and I felt his kiss, soft but demanding. A wave of pleasure came over me, and I reached for him, trying to capture this moment and remember it forever. There wasn't the slightest barrier between us, and the feeling was glorious. I forgot about everything but the two of us, and our unity, which was becoming more and more complete and irreversible. Afterward, we lay side by side, and the silence between us was filled only by the sound of our breathing after everything that had just happened. It was a peaceful silence, but I could still feel the lingering arousal never leaving me. I turned to look at him, and I saw sincerity and tenderness in Lucas's eyes. He said my name, and there was hope in his voice. Thoughts of the future began to fill my mind. I wanted this moment to last forever so we could stay here, in this cozy space, away from the world. He told me he wanted to buy tickets and had already started planning our trip in his head. This idea, his suggestion to go to a beach town with me, just the two of us, gave me a wave of excitement I hadn't felt in so long. Thoughts of what lay ahead of us filled me with joy and anticipation. I smiled as I imagined us walking along the beach, enjoying the sunshine and the sea breeze. I saw how the waves would gently touch the shore and we would run away from them like children, laughing, forgetting all worries. But I knew that this would be more than just an ordinary trip. It would be the beginning of something new, something that would strengthen our bond and allow us to get to know each other even better. We would be able to share our dreams and experiences, opening our hearts to each other. Every moment we spend together will be an important step towards a deeper understanding. Lucas gently reached up to gently brush my hair away from my face, and in that moment, I realized that there was a real connection between us. It wasn't just physical attraction, it was something much deeper. We both knew that this vacation would not just be an escape from our everyday lives, but the beginning of a new chapter in our story. With every moment we spent together, I felt my life fill with new colors. I was ready to open myself up to new possibilities, new feelings, and possibly new love. We both knew that this story would not end here and there were many amazing moments ahead of us. I couldn't wait to see what would happen during this vacation and the many more that lay ahead. I felt like my life was just beginning, and with Lucas by my side, I was ready for any adventure.